Taking this blindfold off to see what this life's all about. Threw my virtues to the ground, drinking from the devil's cup. Take that pill, drink it down, flashing lights all around. High as hell, drunk like I finally don't give a fuck. 'Cause I'm breaking all the rules tonight. Not going down without a fight. As long as I'm still breathing, doesn't matter how hard you might try. We can't take this freedom.
Hey, welcome to the Overpass live stream. Oh, everybody's here already. Hey, Marwan's here. I was just talking to you over on Facebook just now. Data Plus Code, Drew Brialti. Thanks everyone for joining us. Bulent, thanks for joining. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about this week, but I guess it's like every live stream. Last week we talked for an hour and a half, right? And I was like surprised when we got to the end of it, but and I really didn't know what to start with. So this week has been just yeah, I guess lately it's been a lot of roller coaster weeks because, like I said, if you watch the video today, you'll see that that my one employee who's been with me for 4 months, she left to go to another job, which is fine, right? I think anybody who's working a job should always be looking for other jobs. Like, that's the time. If you're gonna look for a job, the time to find the new job. Sorry, can you guys hear me? Okay. Hey, Christopher, how's it going? The time to be looking for a new job is when you already have a job. So like you should always know your market value, and your market value, of course, is determined by what people will pay for you for. So always be looking, right? Like when I was working as a contract, when I was working as a permanent employee, I think the longest I was ever the longest time I was ever in a job was the Army. It was like 4 years. After that, I'd spent 3 years at a job as an employee. That was my last job as an employee, and I couldn't stand it. And the only reason I didn't move on was because I couldn't find another job. In the end, I just quit, which was a big thing. And I know I've talked about that before. And then other times, I had a contract for like 4.5 years, and like every year, I kept saying, it's time for me to move on. And they says, yeah, but we got this one more project. And they would give me like really interesting projects to work on. So I think it's if you stay at one place too long, people start to take you for granted and everything like that. I mean, 4 months. I mean, it's 4 months. It wasn't long, but it was. I have to agree that it's pretty boring in this office. Like, because as a software developer, I'll come in and I'll be coding away for like, or doing whatever, chatting on Slack or whatever, and there's not a lot of conversation that goes on. So. And I start to realize that when other people come in here to work, it's like, then I thought moving to the new office might be a little bit better, but it's still, kind of thing. So that was only like 4 months, but and she told me last week, I got a job interview and I'm gonna go tomorrow. So my intention is to leave, and I said that's fine. I think it's because part of me was like relieved because I thought. It's like less that I have to pay each month, and then that means the client revenue, like if that's slow and everything like that, I'm not so stressed about it. But the other side was like, oh, that means I got to do all this stuff myself. And some of you guys have been pointing out in the videos this week that the audio is messed up or other things. So I got to get back into the habit. Like for like a year, like over a year, I was just, well, for most of the time I've been editing the videos myself, but it was nice because I could just film the videos and she was editing them each day. And I kind of fallen out of practice. So and I had my microphone break down, and that's one of the other things I want to talk about. The last couple of videos, everyone's complaining about the microphone being too low, and that's just it's so annoying. So here I got this microphone over here. Look, this is the one I use. I use this. It's a Rode Video Mic Pro, which costs, I think it was like 180 pounds. Right when I bought it, I thought, I don't know if I need that expensive microphone. But it worked really well. But now it has a short in the wire. Like everything that has a 3/4 inch plug, whatever they're called, it gets a short in the wire, and then it got to the point where I'm fiddling with it for half an hour to make sure that I get the audio coming through. And there's nothing more annoying than going out and filming a video and then coming back and finding out you have no audio. So that would happen from time to time. So let's see. Hey, Midnight Gamer, welcome. So Data Plus Code says, is it hard to stay disciplined when working on your own in the office? Do you find yourself slacking when you should be working? That was one thing about having an employee. Like, I felt guilty if I didn't come in, or if I took a long lunch or something like that, even though I'm here early in the morning. I actually find it easier in the office just because it's you know, because you're on your own. Because you know what it's like to work as a software developer. There's something, if you're working on your own versus working for someone else. If you're working for someone else and you're coding on one window and you're watching like a DVD box set on another monitor, they assume that you're not getting anything done, right? And sometimes you don't. Like you're coding away, it's on in the background, you can hear it, you've seen it before, like a movie or something, and you're just coding away, but it's just sort of like passes the time, right? As opposed to you're just watching that and not doing anything. And it usually depends. Like if you do like the code where it's like, I've done this over and over and over again, I could just code through it or whatever, and then if something happens. Like for me, I used to come in like really early in the morning when to watch the Padres play baseball, like at 4 o'clock in the morning, and it was like, and baseball's such a slow sport that things happen from time to time. So, and I never really watched the World Cup, but I should do. So yeah, no, I think it really does. Having your own office is so much different than being in someone else's. I hated being in another office. I think one of the last places I worked, it was quite a while ago. There was this office out in the middle of nowhere, and they put me down at a desk that's just facing the wall, and nobody talks throughout the day, and they just sort of, when the boss leaves, everyone kind of moans, and then they just and then nobody would leave, and then when 6 o'clock would come along, or 5 o'clock would come, most of them would leave, and then I'd get up to leave around 5:30, and that's when the owner would come back, and he'd have a conversation with me for like an hour and a half, and I'm too polite to say anything, so I'm just like, I just want to go home, right? Just being in this place, and the highlight of the day was walking down to the grocery store to buy a sandwich with a couple other guys, and then taking it back and eating it at my desk. And I thought, this is not the life I want to be living. So Marwin says, I think it is, but still much better than working from home. I think working from home is good. Depends on what your home situation is like. I once worked in a contract where I was working from home and he was working from home like a couple days a week, and we'd work in an office the other 3 days. So, but he was like, in my home, I set up a desk, and it was like in another room, and I could close the door, and I had everything, because I had Overpass running on the side. So for me, the speed of the internet was really important. The professional environment was really important. Having a place to go, and he would work from home by sitting on his couch, and he had like the entry-level broadband, which was not very fast, and his internet would always go down, or he'd reach his usage limits, and you try to get in touch with him, he's not there, and or he's just sitting on the couch, and he says, hey, I prefer the office environment, and I loved working from home. I loved just having your own music playing, just everything's really comfortable. So, and there's other things, like as a software developer, like if you're coding something for yourself, you're not concerned with looking professional. You're concerned with the output. So like if you got up really, I'll get up at 4:30 in the morning, and I'm working through, and then maybe I'll have lunch, and then afterwards I'm like, dude, I'm really tired, right? It's more efficient for me to take a 10-20 minute nap, just put my feet up on the desk and just take a nap here in the office, and then be supercharged when I wake back up. But if I was working in somebody else's office, there's no way I could do that. It'd be like, Eric's lazy or whatever, that we're not paying him to take naps and everything like that. So it's just, when you're working for yourself, you're not concerned with looking the part. You're concerned with the output, with just getting things done. So Azimuth, hey Azimuth, welcome, thanks. Meow Studios is here. Cheers. And Marwin says, when at home I get distracted and also need a lot of space for all the screens. I think it's easy to get distracted by things, and sometimes it's easy to convince yourself that you're being distracted by something that is work related, like a tutorial, for example. Like the amount of times I've been sitting here working on like a client project that I have to get done, and then I convince myself I need to learn MongoDB or whatever it is at the time. It's like, nah, it's really important that I learn this because it could be like, this could be useful, which it can, but it's like, it's not the time and place. So, but I guess it's like you're procrastinating in a good way. You're procrastinating on something that is, it's still something you need, as opposed to watching, like a Netflix series or something like that, and just letting the time just slip by. So, but no, I think it's good. So yeah, so this week I had my employee. So this is one of the things. A couple weeks ago, I was super stressed. I was super stressed because of the ear spy problems with the client work was kind of slow for a while, and and I've got like a bunch of meetings booked next week with some new projects, and we were quoting on a bunch of stuff, and just I'm just taking it a little bit slower. But a couple weeks ago, I was super stressed out, and then this week it's like everybody's. My designer, who's been working with me for 4 years full time, right? And she's fantastic. She's going down to part time, so she's going to be working part time. It's not my choice; it's her choice. So that's so there's that. But there's good good and bad parts of that. The wonderful thing about having Sandy working full time was the time, not the times where she had client work to do, although that's the time we needed her, but it was the times where we just think of something to do for this, or like she designed a new intro for the videos this week, which I haven't started using yet. I think I might wait till we get to episode 400, but that's the kind of the fun stuff. So do an Instagram post and everything like that. And then my other and then the other person on my team, she's had some problems and not be working this week because she's got family issues to deal with. So it's been really a lot of me by myself this week. Just like in the old days, it was like, I feel like this isn't a company, it's just me. And of course, I've been having a lot of conversations with the team in Vietnam and going through stuff, and I have the whiteboard. I bring the whiteboard over here and doing all that stuff. And we're really finding that working with a whiteboard and the video web cameras is so much easier than just trying to do it through chat. So Drew Biotti says, Eric, in which types of projects you are currently working? So I've got a bunch of client projects going on at the moment. It's mostly what I'm doing is client projects. So like they're construction companies. So like they're companies and a few others. I'm under NDA, so I don't want to go into too much. But yeah, it's a lot of stuff working for clients, and also what I need to do is go through and finish those stupid. Re-upload those games, which I did the GDPR thing, and I got all those bad reviews and I pulled them down, so I need to do that soon. But let's see. Meow Studio says, has June been a good month for you guys in terms of in-app purchases wise? For me, let me check. Let me just check. Let me check my daily revenue report here. Because one of the things, because I removed all the apps from Apple. Let me just see if this has been, Rowena's been out all week, so I don't know if this spreadsheet's been updated. So I'll show you my revenue for this month, just so you can see. So this only goes up to the 22nd, actually that's not bad. So like, yeah, for me, this is this is June. So here you can see, like at the beginning of the month, I was getting no revenue from Ear Agent, so that are the Android version. So everything is really low here, and then it got back up to about 60-70 pounds a day under AdMob, and well, we had an 80-pound day. That was something, but it's been like just really bad. This I think I told you about. I showed you the spreadsheet in videos before. Like these are like. This turns red if there's no. Let me just move this down over here so I can see you guys' questions. This turns red if it's below like 150, right? And it's been below 150 for months, so it's just trying to get that up. But a lot of it is, so if you look here, a lot of it is the iTunes Connect, because we went through at the end of last month and removed all the Apple apps, so that's there. Our in-app purchases and our purchases are actually, they're okay. But like if I show you, let's show you May. We have like under iTunes we have $50, whatever. So it fluctuates a lot more in iTunes. But this is the point here where we removed all the Apple apps because I needed to get that update through. And yeah, that was like 2 days before GDPR hit on the on the 23rd of May, which is my brother's birthday, we went through it. Just prior to that, we removed all the Apple apps, and then everything just, so Apple is not really a thing in terms of purchases for me so much anymore. But the other one. So yeah, if I show you just May, we had a lot of over 100-pound days. Mostly it was over 100 pounds, and now we're still struggling to get that back up. So that's just to answer your question. That's me. I don't know the rest of you guys, how the rest of you guys' June has been. David Demel says, have you found a good React Native developers on online jobs.ph? If so, how do you pay them? So not on online jobs. I have a team in right now. We have some React Native developers in Vietnam, but I have looked at online jobs.ph. So I do have Ionic developers through online jobs.ph. So you talk about how to pay them. So for me, to begin with, I would start with like every week I was paying on PayPal, right? So I would say, okay, we're going to pay 20,000 PHP a month or 25,000 PHP, whatever it is. For developers, usually around 30, 25 or 30, depending on the skill level. And that's like $450, $500, something like that. And so you pay that. But what I would do is I pay once a week. And I think when I see, the thing is, early on online jobs, people were saying, I would talk to so many people, they said the last employer didn't pay them and all this stuff. And there's so much distrust that I thought, well, I'll just pay in the beginning and then I'll take the hit. That way, I'll take the thing, but we'll do it once a week. So I'll pay at the beginning of the week. That way, it's their job to lose, right? They know that it's, if you've ever worked a job as a freelancer, there's always that fear in the back of your mind that you're not going to get paid, right? So you try to give your all, but at the same time you're not, just in case, like you're just holding back a little bit. So I thought, well, I'll just pay up front and then we do it. So I still do that now. I pay up front, right? And I do it monthly now. But usually for the first month or two, we just pay by the week, and I pay by PayPal. The problem with PayPal is that they take the fees out on the other side. So I don't even see what the fees are. And then people will complain saying the fees, we agreed on this and I've only got paid this, and I go, I paid through PayPal or whatever. So you tell me how much I need to pay, and so now we use something called Azimo, AZIMO, and I just pay once a month or once or twice a month to that. So I just do that, and I make them send me an invoice because they're not permanent employees. They are freelancers, so they work on a freelance basis, but as a full-time. So they'll send me the invoices, and I'll pay based on the invoice. So I make sure I have that paper trail. So so that's how I do it, David. So and I've been doing that for years. Hey, Rodrigo, you're here. Rodrigo, I was going to reply to your comment yesterday. You said, I don't know if you read the comments, and I did, but I was like, I had to bring my MacBook to the Apple store in, like, it's like an hour away. I just got back from picking it up, so they fixed it overnight. I had this problem with the fan, but no, I did see that, and I do need to put that in. So Rodrigo said that if you go into Webmaster Tools and connect it to your Google Play account, you can see what keywords people are typing in to find your app. This has been the missing link for like ages for me. Like if I could just find out what they were, how they're finding it, then we could, if we know how they're finding my app, then I could strengthen those things. So if people are finding it, like, so Ear Agent is a hearing app, so people are finding it because they're looking for hearing aids, then I could emphasize the hearing aid parts because I know that's how most people are finding it. Or if they're finding it because of the spy thing, then I could emphasize more of the spy side of things. So it's rather than, if you don't know how people are finding it and you don't know what their motivations are, then once they get to that page, you don't know whether or not you can actually have them make the download decision. So I mean that's something I'm definitely going to look into this week. Lokesh said, does AdMob ads show up in unsigned APKs for testing? I think they do. Yeah, they definitely do. You need to make sure if you're doing AdMob in testing that you put add test device, and in order to do that you have to run the ad. This is how I do it. There might be a better way. Run the ad with the AdMob in it, and it will register. But watch the logcat, because the logcat will say add this device ID in order to display the test ads, and then you just put add test device in the code, and then that way when it shows the ads, it'll be the generic AdMob ad and everything like that, and you don't have to worry about accidentally clicking on it or accidentally showing too much and getting your account suspended before you even go live. So make sure you do that. So Let's see. Kirskanoff. Christoph. So I'm sorry, Christoph. Hey, how's it going? Unfortunately, I cannot watch now with you guys. Your videos. Well, the video will be on your channel. Yes, it'll be on the channel later. So let's see. Let's see. No, yeah, Rodrigo. I didn't know that. I really didn't know that. So let's see. Vikas Kumar Saw says, congratulations on 10K. Thank you very much. I'm still really over the moon about that, the 10,000 subscribers. I find, you know what, for some reason hitting 10,000 subscribers, it's made this week's videos harder because I'm thinking, what am I going to talk about this week? Like, it's just, before it was just like, you know, I'll talk about something app related or whatever's on my mind. And this week, I think every so often you get that perfectionism creep in and you start thinking like, no, this has got to be good enough because now we have 10,000 subscribers. And, you know, it's, yeah, but no, that's pretty good. And, you know, and the more people are watching, the more nervous you get. So I'm just trying to think, don't, just the same. Don't act any different. Just do it the same way as before. So, and usually I try to get a few days ahead on the videos, but I have one ready for tomorrow, but that's it. So it's, I need to get on that this weekend, also. So, let's see. David Demol says, thanks for the tips. Is vietdev.com the site you use? No, I haven't. Oh no, these guys were like, I met them through some other contacts a while ago, and I've used them, and I've been out to visit them out in Vietnam, and they're really good. Their code is really clean, but sometimes we have communication issues. But I think that's the same all the time. Like we have this app, we have an app that we've had a few issues with going forward, where it's like it's coded really well. So I go through and look at the code, and I you know, it's down to me really, because that's my value add, is I need to know what everything is doing. And so I look at it and say, oh yeah, that looks like it all works or whatever. And then when I went back and looked at more detail, I thought, well, this is not going to be what we're doing. It's like, you know, everything is built like really well, but it's like in the wrong place. It's like I built a house, but I put it in the wrong place or something. So like, oh, we have to go back there and do that. So so we have those kind of issues, but I haven't tried vietdev.com. And the only reason I use onlinejobs.ph is just to find people. And one of the problems, and I've talked about onlinejobs.ph website before, I've had a lot of people cheat me on that, and you know, they're working multiple jobs and stuff like that. And I've had people who are working multiple jobs, and I find out about it and I just let them go. Or which I don't mind if they have like another part-time job, right? Or if I know about it. But I've had people who had like 3 or 4 full-time jobs, like 8-hour-a-day jobs, like where it's like it's not even possible, right? You can't work 32 hours in a day. So, but I think it's just such an easy prospect. And you know, as a developer, they can just tell you, oh no, I'm having trouble with the database, whatever. Oh, I'm just having a little snag here. I'm just having a little snag there. But after a while, you just like, it doesn't go any farther. So. But that's not to say. I mean, I think it's just the nature of it. You just gotta find good people, and you know, and I found some really good people through that, obviously. Let's see. Christoph. It's a Polish surname, so it's hard to speak. Sorry about that. I'm really bad with. I'm American. I mispronounce, you know, most things over here, so it's hard for that. Shajil Afzal says, any plans from hiring from developers from Pakistan? Oh, you're available for work. Oh, cool. What technologies you use? See, the thing is, it's really, see, I get companies contact me all the time saying, you know, we could be your new developers, all this kind of stuff. Most of the time, it's a business development manager, so I'm not actually talking to developers. And this is one of the things that really bugs me about it, is that, you know, when you ask, well, can you work on this? Can you work on whatever, Flutter, whatever? Do you throw something out there? They go, oh yeah. No, we can't. No, our guys are really smart. And can I talk to those guys? But a lot of the times the developers, they don't want the developers to talk to the clients, right? Because they think that the developers' English is too bad or whatever, or they're not presentable. I don't know why, but like that, those are the people I want to talk to. I want to talk to the developers because they're the ones who, I mean, like if he's switched on, if he's all this kind of stuff. But most of the time they want you to talk to their management or their business development manager. So I get that a lot, and a lot of we have a lot of projects that come through. Sometimes I just don't take them on because it's finding the right people to work with, and you know, so I've had full-time developer. I had a full-time developer in Ionic, and which was good. So when we had projects come in, he could work on it. But then when it was slow, when it was slow, he didn't have much to work on, so I tried to give him little projects here and there, but they weren't really serious, so it was like the deadlines were really flexible. And then when a serious project did come along, I think his momentum has slowed down, and he might work slower than before, and lazy. I think it's one of the things that I'm finding. For me, I've always said that it would be easier for a developer to become a manager than a manager to become a developer, because there's so many more skills involved, but there's still things to learn, and I'm learning these things as I go. One of the things is, even if we don't have a lot of work on, I have to keep people busy. Otherwise, it just gets bored. They get bored, and it's like, I'm doing things that don't matter in life, and I think that's and I've worked in jobs like that too, where I've worked in some place where they say, "Oh, Eric, sit down. Oh, we got all these projects coming up." I worked in this place where I was being paid so much money at the time. I thought it was a huge amount of money, that I thought, there's no way I'm going to see if I could stay in this job this contract for as long as I can. And they had me sit down at a desk, and I had nothing to do for 3 months. It was initial 3-month contract, and there was no work to do. But they were really big about, you're not allowed to look at the internet and just surf the web while you're sitting at your desk. So you sit there and try to read through documentation, you try to read through other stuff, and you like doing this. I was like, trying to do stuff in VBA. You're just trying to look like you're working. It's hard to look like you're working when you have nothing to do, because people, but then I found that I kept asking and saying, "Hey, I don't have anything to do over here, right? Hey, and it got to be annoying to my manager, because he was like, he had other things to worry about than me being bored. So, so in the end, I stopped asking, and but it was after that where they just all of a sudden gave me like every project that came in, and I was like super swamped with stuff, and I was like really stressed out. So let's see, cool. Shajil says, "I'm Google certified Android developer with 5+ years experience." This sounds like a game show, like the dating game. He is a Google certified Android developer with 5 years experience. He uses Java majorly for developing Android apps. I'm sorry, Google Firebase is my major skill. Google Firebase, that's awesome. That's a great skill to have. That's what we're using for almost everything these days. I'm getting comfortable with Flutter day by day. That's awesome, Sujil. Yeah, we should talk. Meow Studio says, "Are you considering scaling up your company for offering services? I'm curious about what are your findings so far on this, because I know I have been considering it for a while." Yeah, I've been thinking. Some months it just seems, Meow Studio, some months it just seems like it's just struggling to get by. Like there's so much going on. Like I'm always busy, but then we've got client projects. Sometimes we have a project that goes late, and we need to get it wrapped up so we can get paid for it. Or we might have other things too. But there's so much potential there that I'm just not capitalizing on. Like ASO services would be a good thing, and people have contacted me and said, "Can you do ASO for my app?" And I'm like, it's not really something I want to do, but it's being able to offer that service, but also in a way that I have people that I can rely on and trust, and be able to deliver a good service on that. There's a really good book called The E-Myth Revisited, where they talked about the companies growing. I don't know if you've read it, and where there's these stages, like the infant stage of a company, and the adolescent stage, and the whatever mature stage. And there's always, every time you get to these points of friction, you think, I could either grow or we could shrink, right? And it's time to grow, but I'm constantly thinking about how do we move up on that. Even things like having products besides just the apps, maybe having some sort of ebook or course or something like that. But it just seems like everybody's doing that, and and I like doing the videos. And I think part of me thinks of, if I take the videos and start trying to, like, I'm gonna sell you guys stuff every day, then that would suck. I mean, I would hate to watch that kind of video. So I haven't done yet. But at the same time, it's like, just getting by. I got the app revenue coming in. I got client revenue coming in. We got new clients coming in. We got all this stuff. And sometimes I'm just like, I'm swamped with stuff. And I think it's growing, and it's getting better at delegating things, me getting better at handing things over to other people, and taking myself out of the equation a lot of the times. So I don't know if that's kind of what you mean. So and then you say, "Oh, is it worth it?" Strictly strictly for offering services. You plan on using freelancers or use British employees. Have you thought about finding investors to help you scale up risk-free? See, I don't think investors is risk-free. I think investors is like bringing somebody else in that you know that you lose control. For me, somebody asked me in one of the comments about seeking investors for apps, and I think that might be good, but if you have an investor, then every time you want to make a change to your app, I would think that they would have something to say about it. Or like if the app started to fail for whatever reason, you're like, if everything's fine, you know, we're just having a little dip here, then they'll be like, no, change this, change that, because it's their money at stake. So yeah, for me, that's what it does. And in terms of if you could do a product company or a service company, a product company is definitely much better because you could sell a product company. I mean, you could sell a service company too if you have everything documented, because if you could document everything in a certain way, then it becomes a product, like it's something you could do. So that was one thing we've been doing since the beginning of this year, is we've been documenting everything that we're doing. So day to day, Rowena on my team, she has certain things she does every day, and it's all documented. So if she ever leaves, or if she takes on more responsibilities, then somebody else could take that over. The person who just left here in the office, she was documenting everything she did too. So if somebody comes in to edit the videos and all the other stuff that she was doing, they could just take over. And if we were able to make that work and make it scalable, that's the whole thing. A service business is harder to scale. Like if I could scale my apps, because I don't need to worry about them being unavailable. If I scale the website, I might, because the server might go down or whatever. But if I'm scaling the apps, it's cool because it's just more people buying them. They're on the App Store, right? I could just, it's a marketing issue. But when you're scaling services, it's not just a marketing issue. It's a marketing and bandwidth issue and all this kind of stuff, making sure everybody does. So I think about that a lot. Marco Volber says, what do you pay for your developers? It depends on the skill. It depends on the skill, and it depends on what they do. So, you know, whatever, Marco, whatever number I tell you, it's either going to be too much or too little. So I'm not gonna answer that one. Rodrigo says, why not hiring people just for X project? Hire them for X app so you don't have to keep them busy. That's something everybody keeps saying that to me. Like, I'm gonna get stressed out about that. The hard bit is, like, if you've ever hired somebody on Upwork and they're really good, and then you go back to them for something else, they're usually working on another project when you come back to them for something else. Or you have to, it takes a while to find somebody who's really good, and you have to go through them all again and again. I had this issue with designers, right? With a designer, I found somebody who was really good, but he had other projects too. So like sometimes I'll say, I need this design work, and he's like, okay, but I've got this, this, and this. I could get to it next week or 2 weeks time or whatever. And I've had deadlines and everything, or he might not be available, or he might just whatever. He might raise his prices, whatever. So I have to go so then I have to go find somebody else, and I have to go through that whole learning curve with somebody else saying, these are my expectations, this is what I want, and everything like that. So, and also if you hire somebody for just a project-based work, it's going to be more expensive. Like if somebody hires me for a project-based work, if they say they want to hire me for a 6-month contract, they would pay a certain amount. If they say they want to hire me for a certain job, I would not take the 6-month contract and then divide it by whatever days I think the job is, because they don't have that luxury. Like that's the whole thing. To hire an employee, you don't pay as much for an employee as you do for a contractor, because you give them security. You give them, you don't have to worry in 2 months' time or 2 weeks' time that you're gonna have to find a job. So you can find a full-time person for a lot less, and if you can keep them busy. So for stuff like VA, virtual assistant type of stuff, that's really good for hiring somebody on a regular basis. But sometimes the project-based work, not so much. So the developers in Vietnam, that's exactly how they work. They're not full-time with me, but they do work on those projects like that. So Shajil says certificate blog. Okay, Shajil's still doing that. So what I need to learn cross-platform mobile. There's so many tutorials out there. There's so much stuff. I think you should, cross-platform. You've got Xamarin, you got Flutter, you got Ionic, Cordova, you've got React Native, you got loads of different stuff. If you do games, you got Corona SDK, you got Unity, you got Coco 2DX. Right? Those are all cross-platform frameworks. Let's see. Yeah, ebooks and So Christoph ebooks and shorts. Oh, sorry, I'm not keeping up, you guys. Chris, basically, as you're already at the topic of Ionic, according to your experience, native or some other phone gap solution? I know it depends on the project, but what factors influence your decision? If I could do Ionic or non-native, I will do non-native. I mean, it's just unless there's something that comes up and says, no, we have to do this as native, like because it's, and we've done some stuff in Ionic that I would have thought we weren't able to do, but I mean, it really held up. So we have stuff that has like, we have an app that communicates with the device at like 10 transactions per second, which to me seems like a lot, but apparently it's not a lot compared to hardware people who work in C and everything. But it's like constantly communicating with this device, and it keeps a thing. Or yeah, every 100 milliseconds, it's communicating with the device. And I would have thought that would needed to be native, but no, it works fine in a hybrid framework. And you could with the hybrid framework, you could just, even if you got really good at doing like Cordova plugins, which is so unbelievably complicated in my opinion. Every time I've done a Cordova plugin, I'm like, this is not worth the trouble. But so you could do like that and just focus on the back end, the things that are particular to the two platforms, and you have the one UI between them. So for me, we'll only go native if we're taking over a project that's already native, or it's we just, for some reason, we don't think we could do it hybrid. Or not. When I say hybrid, I mean cross-platform, so not necessarily HTML and JavaScript. So let's see. Christopher says, have you ever tried to go to press for any of your apps, or have you solely relied on ASO and localization? No, we did for a while. We did, like, we're experimenting with press releases. So we released it was like one of the Bubble Bath games. We released Vietnamese Bubble Bath, and we wrote a press release on it. And it wasn't me, it was somebody on my team wrote a press release, and we put it, there's like PR log, there's like a couple of press release websites, and one of them was expensive, one of them was free. I think we released it on the free one. And like within a week, I got a phone call. This is kind of weird. This is something to watch out for. Get a phone call from someone who says they're with a television show, and they do this television show on the Discovery Channel where they talk about technology and they talk about apps, and they would like to feature my app. And I said, oh, which app? And they said, Vietnamese Bubble Bath. And I said, okay, right. And as I'm talking to the guy, he kind of led on that it could be, it doesn't have to be Vietnamese Bubble Bath. It could be any one of your apps that we could feature. And I thought, that doesn't sound like, that doesn't sound very good. And apparently, there was that's how they made money. So there was something that I would pay them to feature my app on their show. And I thought, how is this, what kind of revenue stream is this? All right, and you'll find this a lot in apps. Like once you release an app, you'll get hit with a lot of people who don't produce apps and they don't know anything about it. But if they think that they can get you to pay them, like, then they will. So I've had companies call me up, say they could give me an offshore, like when I was just doing Overpass, I was saying we do offshore software development. It was I would get companies call me up saying we do offshore certifications, and for $2,000 we could give you a certificate you could put on your website that would say we approve your company as an offshoring thing. And I thought, I don't even know who you guys are. Like that's just like, that's your revenue stream. You go out and give certificates. Can I just give certificates to everybody? Like, here's my badge. I made it in Photoshop. You put it on your website. Just pay me $2,000. So you get that a lot. And it's these experts out there. I did a video a couple years ago where I talked about app vultures, and those are what people I talk about. Like once you go out there, because you put an app onto the App Store, it might not be doing very well. You're vulnerable. You're like, this is not working out. Not only is it not working out, but everybody knows I did this app, and everybody's saying every day, how's that going and everything like that. And you're like, and then somebody calls you up and says, hey, I can make it work for you. All you have to do is pay me all this money, and I can make all these problems go away. So so you have to watch out for that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, I think if you go to the press, that's only going to be a boost for so long. I've had the biggest day I've had for Spy years ago was when it was featured on the front page of Gizmodo website. Well, it was featured on a Gizmodo article, and it was like we just had loads of things. I had this video on how to use it, and it was just in my attic, and my hair was all messed up. I'm talking about it, and I had like 60,000 views on YouTube, that video, which was a video they featured. But even then, it was a spike, right? It wasn't like you can't get the press to talk about your app every day and have a consistent revenue stream. But it would be good if you get it in front of people, and hopefully it could spread that way. Let's see. Vikas Kumar Saw says, what is your opinion on suggestions about an HTML5 hybrid game inscribed as an app? What about performance? This is something that this is back in like 2013. I think I was using this JavaScript game framework called Impact.js, and it was like, even at the time, 2012, 2013, even then it was a few years old. But I ran it in Cordova, and it just lagged, and it was just so slow. And I don't know. Every time every so often I will look for a JavaScript based game framework, and I think Phaser.js is probably a good one. But every time I try to run it, it seems like you've got so many different phone speeds and everything like that. If you can use Crosswalk, it's probably better. And then there's also there's another one. Oh yeah, there's one Cocos 2DX, which is C, I think. There's a JavaScript version of that, but when I was looking at that, the documentation was not very good, so I didn't do that. So I still have a bunch of stuff in Corona, and every so often I think I need to rewrite this in one of these other frameworks. But if you're gonna go that way anyway, you might as well use Unity, right? So but that's my idea. I guess a nice thing about using one of like Phaser.js, is it Phaser? Yeah, it's Phaser. It's not Photon. Yes, Phaser. And if you use something like that, you could, because you're web based, you could put it like in Facebook and do a Facebook game that way too, and you have a lot more flexibility. But let's see. Bojan Arama, hey, how's it going? I've just read that Airbnb is going back native. Oh, really? So I remember when Facebook went to hybrid, and then they went back to native. And I think now they must be React Native. But let's see. Vika says, are hybrid apps and games low in performance compared to native apps and games? Yeah, as a general rule, they are. They're lower in performance, but it depends on what you need. Like a lot of stuff we do is business based, so you don't need a high frame rate. You do not need 60 frames per second to have a list that scrolls down. But it's so some people will say that. They'll say, oh, it's not as good, whatever. But you're talking about I could spend a bundle to get something that's just like, it's not quite so laggy. It's like hardly even noticeable. Now, if you have something like a game which is a high frame rate, then that's a lot more important. So you need something that's really responsive and everything like that. So but yeah, no, generally native apps are faster, but you're still talking about the frameworks on top of it. Like, I know very few people who code. Actually, I don't know anybody who codes a game in native without using one of the frameworks, Unity or Cocos 2DX or something like that. So that has some complexity on top of it. We use Corona SDK. I've got a book over here on beginning Android development, and that's just that, writing the game loop, doing everything in native Android Java code, right? So you would have to, if it took off in Android, you would have to move it to iOS and everything too. So let's see. Abalash Abi says, hey Eric, quick tips for a beginner who wants to be an app developer. Start coding. Put something out there. Your first app might not be very good, but you'll learn all about the process and get everything on there in the App Store. But don't just do it on your own, because there's so many developers out there who are just lone wolves, and they have been their whole time. And then if you ever get a job, then there's nothing worse than hiring somebody who's never worked with other developers, right? Because they're not disciplined. They're just, everything works, so they get everything to work, but it's just the way they do it. I've worked with a lot of people like that. And there's the alternate side is you work with people who've only worked with other developers, and they're just like, they can't see the shortcuts which are right in front of them. Like, you're just like, well, why don't you just, I know it's not the most elegant solution, but why not just do this? Because then it's done now, rather than you spending 2 weeks trying to figure out why the other thing's not working. So I think it's good to be able to work with other developers, and if you can't, then look at other code. So there's a lot of open source projects and stuff like that, and once you look at other people's code, you say, oh, that's how he does it, and that's how that does it. So let's see, what have I got here? El Rodrigo says Construct 2 is good. Oh, that's right, Construct 2. I forgot about that one. But it uses Crosswalk by default, so it makes it big. Yeah, Crosswalk's like 30 megabytes or something. But lately, I've been seeing a lot of apps that are, 30, 40 megabytes. That's one of the things about a native app. Ear Agent is, I think, 5 megabytes. That's probably all images. So it's but you use any game framework. It depends on how they use it. Sometimes they will put everything into the APK. So you got all these libraries you don't need. So you might have like or whatever, like the Bluetooth or whatever you might not even be using, and it's just huge. I mean, there's been a time in the past where we released an app that had. It was like 80 megabytes or something like that, and then I went through and just looked at it. We had plugins that we'd put in there that we didn't need, like we were going to use them at one point, but we weren't using them. We just commented out the code. We left the plugin in there, and it was like 10 megabytes. And then we were using WAV files instead of MP3 or OGG files for the images we were using. If we didn't need transparency, a JPEG would be lighter than a PNG, and even the PNGs could be lower resolution than they were, and we would have all this stuff in there, and it just made these files really huge, and it was trying to go in and optimizing it, as much as we can to get the file size down. I think we got it down to like 10 megabytes or something after that, because it was just huge. A WAV file, you never use WAV files in your app, even though the quality is supposedly better, but they're just so huge. Let's see. Christoph says, thanks, Eric. It's priceless to know the opinion of a person who's deeply in it. You've listed many non-native solutions, Cordova, Ionic, basically Cordova, Xamarin, and so on. Referring to your progressive app, for example, there are lots of stuff going on right now. Do you have any picks for the near future? I still think Flutter's a good solution, and like I said, when we focus on client stuff, for me, like if we're doing an app for a client, I just want to find the quickest solution. The quickest solution to go live is the one that I want. Like when I was working for somebody else as a developer, and they would come to me and say, we just need it done, like done as fast as you can. You're thinking, oh yeah, but you're being paid, so you're like an expert developer. So you're like, no, we need to have the proper frameworks and the unit tests, and we have all this stuff, and you're just like, everything has to be methodical and everything like that. But when you're paying for it, you're like, we just need to get this done. Or when your clients are paying for it, you think we need to get it done on the App Store as fast as possible. That doesn't mean it's going to fall over and break, but it might not be. And the code should be good. And writing good code does not take longer. It just takes experience, right? And even writing unit tests doesn't necessarily take longer. If you do it all the time, then you just do it, right? You just a way of doing it. But it's all the years of learning, doing it the wrong way first before you start doing it. So, let's see. Rodrigo says, yeah, I'd say the size doesn't matter that much anymore. My main app's like 3 megabytes and it's Ionic. Yeah, I mean, the size isn't that big. It's mainly when people go and start. See, I think an app that's like over 100 megabytes is like huge. Especially, I've seen some prospects and clients have come to me and say, "We already have an app. Can you have a look at it?" And I'll look at it, and the first thing I look at is the size, and it's like huge because the developers thought it's not that big of an issue. But if you're going through and you're removing all the apps from your phone, then you're going to go for the ones that are the biggest first. You got to think, which one don't I use that much, and that is the heaviest. Like every time you delete it, every time you run out of disk space, that's the one that's going to go first. So that's the only thing I do. So Ice Cream App says, how can I find app ideas? I cannot find any ideas in my mind. There are loads of ideas out there. Map them out, right? Do a mind map. So like what kind of things are you interested in? What kind of sectors are out there? You could either do it like, say, I'm going to look at see what's popular out there, or you can say I could look where there's a need. Like if you do client work and you wanted to pitch yourself as a company to other companies, so like say I could develop this app for you guys, you just have to look kind of what kind of business problems they have. And those are my favorite kind of apps, right? When we do client work, I like doing stuff that's not necessarily on the App Store because it's less pressure. Like we just need to solve a problem. So like they have people who do this one thing every day, and if they had a phone that they could just scan something as they go through it, then that would improve their processes. It could upload back to like a central database, and they get reporting with GPS coordinates, all this kind of stuff. That's an ideal solution. Otherwise, you got other stuff where you put on the App Store and you have to make sure that they know what they're doing in terms of marketing and keyword management. And we say, how are people going to find this? And they're not there yet. They're doing the same thing we all did. We build the app and then we put it on the App Store, and then we figure out how we're going to get people to find it, and then which is not necessarily the right way around. So and finding app ideas is, I mean, there's loads of ways to do. I mean, when my idea for Ear Spy, and I talked about this before, where I was working on a project in my office. Well, not in my office, I was a contractor. I was working on this project that I just did not like. It was a SharePoint. It was in SharePoint, and I hated SharePoint. SharePoint is like it's a Microsoft tool, but it's really kind of slow, and you're like building on their framework, and so I would do everything in JavaScript and try to do as little on the server as possible. So I got really good at client side stuff, just because I hated working on the server code on that. And nobody, so we're making this tool for the company that we're working for, and nobody in the company wanted this tool except the management. It was something like they were going to force people to use it. So people would complain about this project that I was working on for all the time. And I remember hearing people like in the corner, they would mention the name of the project, and I knew they were talking about it, and I wanted to hear what they were saying. So I'm like listening to headphones with my computer, and I'm thinking, if there was some way I could just turn have the audio coming through my computer and into my headphones, I could turn the volume all the way up, and maybe I would be able to hear better. And then so I thought that that could be an app. But before that, I was thinking all kinds of other stuff, like personal body alarms and stuff like that. There's so many opportunities out there for app development or mobile applications. Anytime you see somebody walking around with a clipboard or doing something or holding any kind of device, you think, well, that could be an app, right? It's ridiculous that we still have, like, think about the remote control. The remote control, it should be an app on your phone. And I know sometimes it is, but like you got I mean, in this day and age, maybe it's not so much, maybe it's just me because I'm older, right? I still have the TV remote, and then you got the digital box remote, and then you got the DVD remote, and then you got the other remote, and you're like, which one is which? And there should be an easier way to combine those all. And there probably is an app out there, but I just haven't cared enough to look for it. But I mean, there's so many things out there like that. So let's see. So yeah, app ideas. There's app ideas still out there, and you could either say, I'm going to see what's popular, I'm going to do that, or you can say, I'm going to do something unique. There's problems on both sides. If you find something that's really popular and you just emulate it and clone it like everybody else does, then you're fighting with everybody else. If you find something that nobody's doing, which most people seem to think they need a totally unique idea, but then you also have to build the market for it. Like I said, the remote control thing, I've never looked for it because I didn't even know if it existed or not. So I'm not, it's not like people are it's not like they're searching for it and it doesn't exist. It's like you have to educate them on that. So there's either way you have to, you're gonna have issues there. So let's see. Rodrigo says, I still use Ionic. I have CSS, HTML, JS minifiers. Let's see. Let's see. Eric, I am not pushing you, but do you rate Flutter over Ionic? No. I should, just because I haven't used it yet. When I look at it, I think it looks really cool, but it's only when you start using it that you realize it's like when you have the plugins. So like, let me give you an example. Like in Ionic, we'll start doing something and I'll realize, we need to connect to the Bluetooth, or we need to connect via Bluetooth low energy to this thing, and it needs to have a high frame rate. It needs to do all this kind of stuff, right? And then it also needs to interface with this other thing. And I think, I'll go out and see if I can find a plugin. And most of the time I can, just because its community's been around for so long. And there's been other times where I've been like in Corona, and I think, it would be good if we could interface with this API over here. And while it might be possible, it's like there's not any examples of it. There's no existing plugins. We could write our own thing and everything like that. So it depends on what it is. When I've watched the tutorials and I've had to play around with it, and I like the idea that it's a high frame rate and it's got Google's backing. So that's what I like. I like the idea that material design is just part of it, So and that's the same with React Native. React Native is something that we're using on projects, and even I have one developer who just complains about React Native all the time because he says it would have been faster to do it in native, and I'm like, yeah, but we're gonna do React Native because this is the first time you're using it. Yeah, it's gonna be faster to do it in native, but in the long run, it's gonna be faster to do it in React Native or in React Native because you just don't know the technology yet, so you're still on the growth curve. So, did that make any sense? Am I just rambling on? Let's see. Rodrigo says, find it on GitHub. Oh, okay, Cordova X filler. See, Rodrigo's like a proper developer out there. He's got like a Linux machine. Knows all the things, telling all the tips and advice. Let's see. You should keep your YouTube channel up, Rodrigo. So let's see. Christoph says, I'm sorry if this aspect were discussed earlier. As you said, there's a lot of opportunities of unexplored niches, but there's also crowd. What about app advertisements, SEO, etc.? This is one of the problems with, I mean, the easiest way to get people to find your app is to put an advertisement out, but it's expensive because everybody's doing the same thing. So for me, the problem we all have is that nobody knows that our app exists. We put it on the App Store. So how can you get it in front of people? One way is put an ad and put it in places which is not where they wouldn't find it. So like they're searching Facebook, they see your ad and they go to it. The problem with that is it's expensive. So if each of your users makes you each user makes you 2 cents, right? Then it's not worth paying 20 cents to get that install. So that's one of the issues. Now you can do stuff with social media, but then you also have to build your social media presence and get people to following you. So it's all a case of jumping up and down and saying, hey, over here, right? It's I may have talked about this before. I once worked with a company. This was back in like 2001. No, 2001, 2000. And at a company that bought a domain. I went to go work as an employee at this company, and they bought a domain which was like a popular word, and but they didn't have a website. So they thought, people were going to that domain all the time, and they thought this is like, I think they paid a lot of money for the domain too. And they asked me to go look at, they had a web server but not a site on it. So they asked me if I could tell how many people were actually hitting that domain. And I went through it, and I wrote a script that went through the IIS logs, and so I could see how many unique users they got each day, or unique hits they got to that domain. And I said, well, you've got like 11 in the last month, and they said, no, it was like 11 in the last 3 months. And I thought it would be like thousands a day. They honestly said I thought it would be thousands a day because they thought people would just be searching on random domains, right? And when we put apps on the App Store, a lot of times we think, oh, they're just going to find it, right? There's two different mentalities there. There's people are looking for it, or people are just going to browse past it, right? Then you think about the musician example. If I'm wandering down the street and there's a guy playing guitar and he sounds really good, then I'll take notice. But if I'm not strolling down the street and then I'm not going to know he exists. But if he's like a one-armed, eye patch wearing whatever, something that I happen to be looking for, then I might find him even though I'm nowhere near that. And the thing is, people aren't just going to stroll past your app. And I think a lot of the times when we release things, we think we want to have this broad appeal to everybody, and we don't want it to make it too specific in the niche, because we think if they stroll up, we think they're just going to stroll past it. But that's not going to be the case, because there are thousands of apps in the App Store, which is the biggest problem we have. It's also the problem that you have as ebooks. It's also the problem Overpass has as a business. There are thousands of businesses out there. There are thousands of app developers out there. I mean, you guys are all app developers. I don't have to tell you guys, right? So if somebody goes looking for app developers, there's so much to choose from. And so how do we get noticed? How do we get in front of people? We could do ads. We could do landing pages. We could do videos. We could do all this kind of stuff just to get noticed. But we're constantly trying to get in front of people. And the same with your application, right? If you have an app so let's say your app is related to, let's say your app is, let's just use like a clone example. Let's say your app is a 3-in-a-row Candy Crush type game, right? You can start putting content out there like let's say it's a Candy Crush type game, which is like really sleazy, and it's called Candy Bounce, right? Because it's like total copyright thing. All right, so you have a game called Candy Bounce. You could start putting content out there, which is kind of spammy content saying how Candy Bounce is better than Candy Crush. Or you can start seeing that, because people are they're not going to be looking for your app yet. They might be looking for the other thing, or they might be, there might be some need, right? There's something that they're looking for that you want to come up in the search results for, and it's got to be unique enough that there's not a million people trying to do that too. At least that's mine. So for us, I started realizing early on that the with Ear Spy, even though it doesn't do a lot, the whole creepiness of it, started to embrace that a bit more, and the spy thing, and the amount of people who email me because they're looking. They say, I get all these emails that say I think my wife is cheating on me. How do I find out what text messages she's sending? And I said, dude, I don't know. We can't do that. Like, the app does not do that, right? But that's like because they think that we just like that we do that kind of stuff. And but there's just a lot of people out there, and they're looking for stuff. Am I just rambling on? So does that make any sense, Christoph? Is it? I think advertisements are just a short way to get to where you need to go, which is to put what you need to in front of people. If you don't have money for advertisements, you have to think, how else can you get in front of people? Just like the guy playing guitar on the street. How many street corners can he visit in a day, and which is the one he can go to that is going to be most foot traffic on? Right? If you're putting content out there, let's say you write an article and it's SEO related on a blog or something like that, which blogs can you post it to? And that doesn't necessarily mean app development ones. People keep asking me, what do you think of app review sites? Do you submit your site to an app review site so that they would review it? And I think that's not where my customers go, right? I don't think my users are going to app review sites to find my app, so it doesn't really matter. I don't think that I had a company, when I was doing the outsourcing thing, I had Outsource Magazine would call me once a month and ask if I wanted to take out a full page ad, right? They say, our subscriber base is such and such and everything. I'm thinking, nobody looking to hire overseas developers is going to go buy Outsource Magazine. Who's going to buy Outsource Magazine is other people who in the outsourcing industry, right? They're not going to be my customers. And people who go to app review websites are probably not people looking for apps. They will go to the App Store and they would find the reviews because it's built in. So so that's just it. If that makes any sense. Are you guys still there? So yeah, that's just it. Hey, we haven't looked at any apps today. Wow. Okay. So hopefully that's been okay. It's nice to talk to you guys all again today. Yeah, Rodrigo's he's got a lot of experience with the putting stuff on GitHub and everything like that. He's the alpha coder. I'm just the guy who talks about apps. That's cool. So any other questions? All right, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thanks everyone for stopping by. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Thanks for joining us today. If we could be of any help, we'll try to do this again next week. And if there's any other questions that come up, and hopefully it all makes sense. And that's it. I'll talk to you guys next week. All right, bye. Hey, I'm gonna end with the intro again, rather than just turning it off. There you go. See ya.